Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space, where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hello, and welcome to With Love, Jenny. We are ready to jump into a new podcast. Today's a little bit different for Kristen and I because we just spent an hour talking about all kinds of wonderful things that we could talk about today. And we're going to kind of start with a story, as I always do, and then see where it leads. One of the things I love about working with Kristen is that when we put our energy together, like we just went through a whole hour of really good, deep conversations and insights, and it makes us think, and we feed off each other in that discussion. And then we're like, we just need to record these discussions and let them be our podcast because we never know where they're going, but it's so fun and it's thought-provoking and soul nourishing. So we hope that's what's going to come out today in this one. Without really knowing where we're going to go, we're going to let Spirit kind of guide us today. So we're going to dive in and start with a story. I was telling her that when I was in college in northern West Virginia University, Morgantown, West Virginia, and we had winters with ice and freezing snow. And so in the spring, our roads were full of pretty big potholes. And if you didn't pay attention when you're driving, your wheel would fall into one of these potholes and jar your back teeth. And I was notorious for running over these potholes. And I never really got my own brand new car. And I had an old car, but it was having trouble. So I took the other family Honda to college. And I came home. The next time I went home, I was like, Dad, this car is so hard to drive. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it's just so hard to steer it. I have trouble. I'm always fighting with the steering wheel to get it to go where I need it to go. And he's like, I don't understand. Come show me. And I was like, if I took my hands off the wheel on a straight road, it would run off the road. It would just veer to the right. And I always having to pull it to the left to get it to go straight. And he's like, oh, you need an alignment. Your car's out of alignment. And I didn't know what that meant. I'm not a big car person still today, but I learned about alignment from him. And I thought about that a lot in life when I start to feel like I'm in resistance, when I have to keep pulling things, like things are hard all the time. I'm not in what some people call flow, or I'm not in alignment with what I want and who I am and what's going on around me. When that's all in alignment, life flows. It's just easy. And when we get out of alignment, we struggle and we have to kind of manhandle ourselves to get to where we want to go. And so I was thinking about that because I'll probably be talking about this, who knows, for years to come. But Bob and I just returned at the time we're recording this. We just got back from a 2-week trip that we have dreamed about since we got married. And every 5 years, we would revisit it and say, is this the year we're going to take this trip? And it just never happened. There was kids, there was college, there were car troubles, there were bad years in our business, good years in our business, bad years for taxes. We had aging parents and life just kept going. And this dream of ours just kept getting put on the back burner. And I never let go of it. It was always like, as you all know, we start the new year with setting intentions. It's like, is this the year? I always kept a little bit of this trip out on my intention board, my vision board, and dreamed about it. But there wasn't really any clear path to go this year until Bob's first cousin said, there's a family reunion. And it's in the town that his grandfather and grandmother grew up in and got married in. And it was our ticket. It was our time. And we fell into an alignment of we're going to go. And we did. And it happened so easy. And I thought that was so easy to fall into place. Why did it take 38 years for us to do this? But we got into an alignment and something clicked that allowed that to unfold. So I started thinking about this, and Kristen and I have been talking about what it means to be in alignment, because in my coaching, most people don't come to me already in the flow and life is working and they're growing and all their needs are being met. They usually come and say, something's missing. I need help getting from point A to point B. There's something not working. They're struggling. They're having to constantly wrestle with the steering wheel of life. And so I always say, I want to know what matters to you. Because if you're living in alignment to who you are, what you value, what you stand for, that's what you want to be in alignment to, and what you want. What is it that you want out of life? Who you are and what you want, where you want to go, what matters to you. Getting really clear about your energetic template and aligning to that, it flows. And most of us, I would say, spend our lives pulling the steering wheel left or right to try to force ourselves into alignment instead of being able to let go and see it just goes straight. We're going straight into the dream life, right? And what causes us to get out of alignment? It's those potholes. Life happens around us. There's world events, there's local events, there's family events, there's relationship events, there's all kinds of kinks and nooks and crannies that distract us and take us away from who we are. But when I start my retreats, I ask that question. We do a little exercise about who am I? Who am I at the core of my being? And who defined that for me? Like, is this really who I am, or is this who I was taught to be? How does our personality come into play? How does our soul get shaped in this path of being a human, having a human experience? So aligned to who you are feels like such a simple concept. But when I ask people, if you were to align to who you are, answering that question gets difficult. They start telling us, well, this is what I do, or this is where I live. This is the job I have. This is my family. I'm a mom, the roles that they play, which is very different than who they are in their core of being. Those things connect to it, but it's asking you to go even deeper. So Kristen shared, I'm going to tile this together and then we're going to have a discussion. Kristen shared something with a group that we're in together. Do you have it, Kristen, that you can just read that talks about the 4 natural sanctuaries?
Yeah, I just saw it on Instagram yesterday, actually. And it was just an image. It said the 4 natural sanctuaries, which are silence, solitude, stillness, and simplicity. And just reading that, my whole body relaxed. I'm like, yes, those are the 4 natural sanctuaries. I agree with that.
I 100% agree with it. And, I've shared stories and have more stories to share about one of the most difficult decades that I've experienced in my long life. And there was a time when I had to go deep. I had to find out what I stood for. I had to find out what were my values and how do I put boundaries around the compromise of those values. Because as a recovering codependent, a lot of times I would turn away from what I valued most to just be accepted and not rejected, or to be a people pleaser. And that helped me to define, like, no, I can't. That's how I got out of alignment. People pleasing took me out of alignment. Being focused on everybody else being okay and not taking care of myself took me out of alignment. So I had to embrace and find my own sanctuary to do this work. And I literally made a room in my house. I took one of the bedrooms that kids were leaving the nest, so I converted a bedroom into my sanctuary. I filled it with all the things that I loved. This is an exercise that you all might want to do. I always encourage my clients to have a sacred space. It can be a chair in your living room. It doesn't have to be a whole bedroom or a big space. It can be very simple, but pick 5 things that you put in that space that reflect who you are, that hold the energy of who you know yourself to be. For me, I love fresh flowers, and so it always has that. I always have a candle, because a candle, when I light a candle, it creates my own sanctuary and connection to God. And so that's a part of who I know myself to be, is someone of faith. And there's other things that I have there, and each tell a story that were the most important things about who I knew myself to be. And so when I would light that candle and I would sit in that space with the things that surrounded me were reflecting the parts of me to remind me who I am and what I stand for. And it was a pretty long process to get the clarity I needed to be able to choose just 5 things that would capture that. You can do more if you want. You can do less if you want. Even if you just have one, it's something. But then sit in that space. And I came to crave it. I think that those 4 sanctuaries existed for me in that space. Like I would have solitude there. Like if the door was closed to this room, I was in church. I was in my sanctuary space, and everyone knew just to let me be. It was where I needed to go into my quiet space. So solitude, the silence, silent and listen have the same letters. And I would find that sometimes when I was in crises, I would come in and just cry or journal and talk and tell, my journal what I was feeling, or talk to God about what was going on. And I then would get exhausted from that, and I would just sit. And I found that when I quit talking or writing or crying and just listened, there was this voice that emerged that comforted me. And there was answers that came. I tapped into my own wisdom. And so the silent part is a big gift when you can sit alone and be silent. The other 2 that you mentioned, stillness and simplicity, the stillness calms your spirit. You've got to calm your spirit down and sit in that stillness. And I found that if I wasn't go, 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 sometimes when we sit in stillness, stuff comes up, it bubbles up. The stuff we don't want to look at, the stuff we don't want to deal with, the stuff that we're running from or numbing out, turning a blind eye to, comes into focus. And that can make it really hard to sit still. There's other reasons that we stay busy, but when you read those, Kristen, and you said my whole body relaxes just to say the words and to feel the energy of those words. And if stillness doesn't bring that, that's your work. If you can't say the word stillness and sit in your own stillness, there's work for you to do. And simplicity, my goodness, we complicate our lives. We fill it with noise and busyness and to-do lists and busy schedules and hectic lifestyles. And we kind of forget some of those basic, simple moments that simplifying your day, simplifying your life, simplify your relationships, slow down. That's such a gift if you can do it, because we live in pretty complicated times. So those 4 things, I guess I want to open up to some discussion from Kristen about just what those sanctuaries are. And do you need all of them? Do you just need one of them? How do we use the 4 sanctuaries? And what comes up for you? And how do you create them? How do you find them? And I'd love to hear what you do with those, Kristen. I've kind of shared some of mine, but how do those show up for you?
Well, for me, my body needs all of them. I was telling Jenny, I'm like, when I read that, I felt like a prescription for life.
Yes.
Like if everyone could take those in as medicine. Wow.
Yeah, right?
But I can be in different situations when I'm in these sanctuaries. If my boys who are on the go have frayed my nerves all day with their noises and just being boys. And then my husband takes them out and I am in these 4 things. I feel like I'm in heaven. Like it feels like an energetic massage. I sit there and think I cannot even believe how good this feels to have this moment. But there are other times when I get the time to have all these sanctuaries at one time and things creep up from my past.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start getting anxiety. So it's interesting that I can experience it both ways. I don't know what makes the difference.
Interesting. So what you're saying is that you can be sitting in one or all of these sanctuaries and have an energetic massage and feel like you're in heaven and relax and be restored by that. And other times in that space, would you say it's more in silence or stillness when some stuff bubbles up?
Yeah, but it's all it'll be
All
all
of them?
4 of them.
Okay. And so
But also,
sometimes,
like you, I do my morning time, and when I get in patterns where I don't when I'm very busy, but when I do it, the things don't bubble up in the morning. It's like it's very intentional. This is my peaceful balancing time. I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. I'm going to keep bringing myself back to my 5 senses, which I've been doing recently because that brings me to the present moment and doesn't let my mind wander. So I go through all of them like, oh, what am I hearing? What am I feeling? I think you taught me that.
yes, the 5 senses, that was in a recent
Yes, it's been a gift to me
newsletter
recently.
blog. It really does help you be present because in those sanctuaries of solitude, silence, stillness, and simplicity, there's a presence. You have to be present there to experience it.
Right.
And I have this thing where I love empty sanctuaries of churches.
Me too.
Whether it's a chapel or a cathedral, I want to be all alone in that big space or tiny space. And that's the stillness and the solitude of being no energy polluting it. No one else's energy is around me. And I am so, my soul is just nourished there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just such a place of peace for me. So when you were talking about what makes the difference in the morning, you set an intention. So it sounds like you put boundaries around these sanctuaries.
Yeah, I guess I do it without thinking. I didn't think about it like that.
Even from you, like, no, I'm going to do an exercise to keep my thoughts in this space.
Right.
To be present and not allow it to go outside of that boundary, because you could easily be sitting there. Sometimes when I began meditating, I would get still and all I could do was go into the future. It's like, I've got this to do today. If I weren't sitting here meditating, I could get a jump start on my day. I've got all this stuff waiting for me. I'm going to be late for this. I forgot I had to do that too. And it was so distracting that I never really meditated. All I did was work myself into a frenzy of anything but a simple life. It was a very busy, hectic time. And life is that for us, especially when you're raising children. There's stuff you have to do. There's places you have to be. And so it's very hard to like carve out 10 minutes to allow yourself to be present to how you're feeling and what you're seeing and what you're sensing around you and be in that moment, which holds the energy of miracles. Every moment does. And if we learn how to step into that and claim it and expand it, you find that that's how you realign, right? That's the alignment. So now your car drops straight all day.
Right.
Otherwise, you're wrestling the steering wheel.
Well, and I usually take probably 20 minutes to 30 minutes total. Jenny and I both love this book. It's called The Book of Awakening. And there is an inspirational message for every day of the year. And this is my 3rd time.
Me too.
Yeah.
I've been reading it for 4 years.
And I don't read it every day, but it's like when I pick it up, it's what I needed. And I journal or I pull a card from one of my oracle decks to get a message from the God or whoever you want to think it's coming from. And I just, when I do that, it's so helpful. I guess what I'm trying to say is because I do get in my busy times where I don't do it, but I've had to come to terms of like, this is like brushing your teeth. You have to brush your teeth every day. You have to.
You don't have to, but it sure is gross all day if you don't.
You don't have to. But you also have to take care of your inner world. Like, why do we make ourselves feel so guilty about taking 20 minutes a day?
Right. Right.
to fill your cup before you enter your crazy busy day. Like, it's worth it.
Right.
I can say personally it's worth it for my health.
I think it is for everyone. And I think it's underrated. I think we make this
Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
unimportant. It's like we can just skip over it. It's like, well, and especially if you're new to this world of sanctuary, I think some people pray on the go. Some people will say, well, I talk to God all day. I used to say that. I talk to him all the time when I'm driving down the road. It's like I pray all the time. That's prayer on the go is different than prayer in the stillness, in the solitude, in the sanctuaries, right? It's creating a sacred space to be in and to have a divine appointment with yourself, a date with yourself. Like, I want to show up for myself to put my priorities and my values and who I am in alignment, make my requests if that's what you want to do, like, ask for what you need that day, or just be. And it's life changing. It's the difference. If you don't struggle with the steering wheel and you just let it go, you will end up in a very different place than if you are in alignment and you're going toward your true north. Like, you won't hit your true north if your car's out of alignment and you're not correcting it, right? Like, or you're wrestling with it. It'll be a hard way to get there, but you would get there. But if you didn't wrestle with the steering wheel and you just let the car drift, just 1 degree off over 10 years takes you to a totally different experience than what you'd be having that is in your realm of possibilities. So opening yourself up to that, it takes intention and it takes boundaries around your time, and it takes courage to sit in the stillness and listen to those things that make you feel anxious and then do the work.
Yeah, I was thinking too, it's like you have to know or start to believe that you are worthy of that time to intimately be in presence and ultimately know who you really are.
Right, right. Not deviate from that, right?
I guess I also want to preface too, like, if you have a really hard time being with yourself, maybe that's where you start with therapy or a life coach, because
Yeah,
that work has really helped me be with myself.
yeah. And you have to like who you are. But how do you like who you are if you don't know innately, who am I? It comes back to this philosophical question of who am I? And we have all kinds of ways to define that.
Right.
There's all kinds, I'm a housewife from, Kansas. I'm a mother of 4. I'm a whatever, like, people have ways to define themselves, but that's your human definition. And who am I from a spiritual definition? Who are you in your soul? What did your soul come to learn? What did it come to give? And how do we leave this world better than had we not been here? Are we just taking up space and ticking off, calendar pages? Or are we here expanding, creating, contributing, growing, learning? What do we come here for? And these get really, these are big questions and they're very philosophical questions. And a lot of people look at me like a deer in the headlight when I ask these questions. But to me, they're insightful, because otherwise you're a feather in the wind. You're at the mercy of whatever life event is happening. You're at the mercy of things that are out of your control that you can't really do anything about. You're at the mercy of your own character flaws. You're at the mercy of your own shortcomings. And you've got to have a solid place to land that shows your worthiness and have a self-esteem that allows you to have compassion and care for the journey that you're on as a human being. And having these sanctuaries, just spending time in one of them, whether it's to sit in stillness or to spend time in solitude every day, just the quiet solitude of being with yourself and with, whoever is your higher power.
I think too, like, especially if you're an empath, and Jenny can probably define that better than I could in words. One thing I didn't know when I started on my journey as an empath and a highly sensitive person is that you take on other people's energy.
and think it's yours.
And I think the more you sit in your natural sanctuaries and do these things, you get to know your own energy
Mm-hmm.
and what's not your energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people do this, like you do it unconsciously too. Like if somebody makes a comment to you about something, now it's in your head as if you keep saying that to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something like you picked it up, but you shouldn't have picked it up because it's not true.
Right.
Or just being around people's energy that's not healthy.
Right.
Like
For you.
you
Yeah.
need to know the difference, and you need to know how to function in the world because that's still going to happen.
Right. And so one of the things that, Kristen, you and I have many conversations about this. So I'm glad you brought it up. What do you do? And in my work, this is what I believe. I believe that when we are as fully healed as we can be, as emotionally healthy as we can be, when we have unpacked our bags and cleaned out our history of stuff that's no longer serving us, and you do all this letting go and all this clarity and redefining who we are, and we know that it takes almost our whole life to get there. I think for some of us, it's taken me forever, and I'm still not there. But the more we are, the closer we get to that, where we're clear about what is our energy and what is not ours. When someone says something to you, rather than taking it on and believing it, if someone says, Kristen, you don't look good with purple hair, and you're like, I didn't have purple hair. Why do you see me with purple hair? Oh my gosh, I've got to go change my hair color. I didn't even know it was purple. And you believe it and you take action as if that was true. You've taken them on. You've taken it on as truth instead of checking in and going, I wonder if you are colorblind. Maybe we need to help you with what your vision is because I don't have purple hair. And it's not about me. That's about them and what they see through their lens of life. That's like a weird analogy, but we do it all the time. We project.
That's been a huge lesson in my life. It's not about me.
Yeah. It's like, them. Okay, what if that's not really what's going on and I can be of help? Now, is somebody saying, Kristen, your hair is purple, and it is, and you don't want to believe that, and you're like, well, I don't have to believe that. That's not my truth. We have to also have a place to sort it out, right? Like we have to really sort it out and get some other people. Like, do you see my hair is purple? Do you think I'm narcissistic? Because this person said I was. We want to go do our research. We want to see, why did they think that? And is there something for me in that I need to take in? And after you do that and you sort it out and you say, no, this is actually something going on with you. How can I be in service to you? And you're not offended. Like if you're easily offended, to me, there's so much work to do. When you can learn how not to be offended, people are offensive all the time. People can just be rude this day and age, it seems.
Well, they're acting out their own traumas. What did Brene Brown says? Stop spewing your shit on other people.
Exactly. But it's our job not to take it on as if truth, right? And we take it on when we either go one up or we go one down with that shit they just spewed on us. And we go, oh my gosh, somebody thinks I'm this, and so I must be. And we go into our shame, or we go into a past wound. And that's why the work is important, to heal that, to get to where you're free to be in relationships and understand I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody's comfortable being around me. That's okay. I can still be aligned to who I am. To align to who I am, I have to know, what is it that I want to align to? And I want to be a person who is caring, who's loving, who's generous, who's compassionate, who's understanding, who is well boundaried. I didn't have boundaries for most of my life, and I've found so much freedom when I finally learned the value of having boundaries, both within myself and with others. What do I stand for? And that clarity of really going in and soul searching, what do I stand for? What matters most to me in life? Where do I get triggered is often one of those being threatened by myself or someone else. If someone's saying, you did this and it was really mean, and I stand for being a person who is kind, I'm going to get triggered because that's not who I want to be. And I have to look at myself and say, what did I do that was unkind? How did I show up and not be true to who I want to align to, right?
I think there's another side to it too. I was talking to Grace yesterday, like you're always wanting to blame the people on the outside, but there's also another layer that I don't know if people are always aware, but the inner attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm so hard on myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been working on that one a lot this year, my inner dialogue, and I only could hear that in my stillness and solitude.
Right.
And I started walking in March as a practice, not an exercise, but I made it a practice and a time for me to be with myself, and also as a way of taking care of myself physically because I lack the care. And when I start to take the time for self care, there's a critic that shows up. And we've talked about that in a past podcast of body image, and not just body image, but just it's not okay to take up time and space for your own selfish needs, right? Just this critic is so loud. I am my own worst enemy when it comes to self-care. So claiming space, claiming sanctuary is the first step of something pretty big. But yes, we have to put boundaries around those voices. And I had to say, I would never say these things to someone else because I stand for kindness, right? But I say them to myself. I allow that voice to reign in my head, and it's anything but kind to myself. And so why do I tolerate that? My mentor, Carol McCall, would tell me when we would have these voices of fear or voices of judgment show up, in the kind of back in the back of our head, they kind of rear up and yell at us inside, to put your hand up and say, stop. Thank you for sharing, but I don't need to hear that today. Stop. Thank you for sharing. You can go away now. And I've had to do that a lot, many, 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 many times, just in one walk. Thank you for sharing, but I'm not going to listen to that today. And then replace that. Instead of that voice, it's you are worthy of care. Your body is a temple that's housing your soul. Let's take care of it together. I love you for taking time to take care of your body. I had to start replacing it with affirming positive messages of love. Why? Because that's in alignment with who I am. I talk to myself the way I would talk to someone else. And if that's not in kindness and compassion and love, then I have hit a chug hole somewhere and I'm deviating off course. And I have to clean that up and come back and get back in alignment again. And that's a daily practice for me because I'm not always kind. Sometimes when I get overheated, I've learned this summer, especially when I get overheated, I throw barbs. I'm not as kind as I want to be. I'm sharp, I'm short tempered, I'm edgy, and I'm abrupt in my speech that comes out harsh because I'm not comfortable in my body right then. And it's like where it shows up is like, oh, something's making me physically uncomfortable. I start being mean, and it's not who I am. And it's okay because then I have to have compassion and not judgment for, I just said something that wasn't very nice. Instead of judging myself, I have compassion. Like, what's going on, Jenny? You need to sit down and take care of yourself and eat some ice or something, cool off, calm yourself, clean that up. I'm sorry. I was hot and I was irritable and I wasn't very kind just now. I'm sorry. I'm taking care of myself. You can count on me to be kind going forward. That's all it takes. And I call it cleaning the bugs off the windshield as you go so that they don't build in the other person who's now going, I don't want to be around her. She's really, unpleasant. You clean it up. And so it's not about being perfect or getting it right all the time. It's just understanding how to pull yourself back into alignment to what your values are. And everybody has different ones. So just because that's mine doesn't mean that who I'm interacting with has the same value. And they may respond different than I would. But who I am is to be accepting of that as part of being kind and caring. It's you get to do you the way you do you. I'm going to do me the way I do me. And my job is keeping me centered and aligned to what those values are and what matters most. And it's a daily correction. We course correct all day long. And if you're not present or stop to get present now and then, you can all of a sudden end your day way off course. And in a relationship, it builds over time. And pretty soon your relationship, it has this big gap in it where you are no longer like, can we even reach each other anymore? And I see that a lot where couples get really busy with life and they don't take time to self-correct and self-align and clean up as they go, and resentments build and distance builds and tolerance grows short, and pretty soon they're really far apart. And it's the work.
Yeah, I keep thinking like life is a process to integrate, not to fix. And what I think I mean by that is people, even me, it took me, once I realized this, I was like, okay, but people want the pill. They want the one fix. Okay, I forgive you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done. Let's walk away.
Yeah.
Or, okay, I accept that situation. Okay, we're done. Let's walk away.
Right.
No, it does not work like that. As much as I wanted to fight it, it is a daily practice.
Yes.
And once you accept that, it makes it easier.
Acceptance. We're back to that one, right?
Yes.
Like that is one of awareness and then acceptance of what you've become aware of.
Well, and I feel like Western culture has taught us like, okay, you read this book, you're healed. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah. 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 Instant fix.
Instapot.
It's like, fix it. I love what you said, to integrate, not fix.
Well, that didn't come from me. That came from Grace. I have to give her that credit.
Way to go, Grace. Grace is our guru.
Well, because she's a Christian. I feel like you think you're always in fix it mode, but you don't have to be.
Well, that's the setup, right? Is that we think we can fix. And I honestly, so many people would say my life would work if he would just do this, or she would just do that, or she was not
How many times
who
have
she
I said
is.
that to you?
Oh, a lot. If I just had a different person in my life in that role, my life would work. I wouldn't feel anxiety anymore. Even if I could just fix my history, you can't go back and change what happened, right? It happened. So integrate it into who you're becoming and what is that person. It's aware that there's something about that person has a lot of energy that's triggering me. And the natural human tendency is to say, I need to fix that about you because I like you. I want to spend time with you. But when you do that, it triggers me. So I have to fix that. And you can't do those things because they upset me. Well, when you're pointing at someone, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. And that is where the work is. Like, it's a boundary violation. It's actually a very egotistical thing to say, you have to fix that for me to be okay. It's, I need to heal so that doesn't bother me anymore.
Right. Jenny said something recently to me that was very profound. We go off on tangents when we talk. If you haven't picked
Lots
up
of them.
we try to stay very focused in these podcasts.
Right.
But we were talking about books, and I said, yeah, the last couple of books I've read have been centered around the Holocaust. And for some reason, I decided to look it up because I get intrigued, and I was like, well, how long did the Holocaust last? So I Googled it. The Holocaust lasted 12 years. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
This horrific experience. And I said, Jenny, how could humanity let that happen for so long? Like, I cannot even comprehend that. And she goes, well, Kristen, what's your personal Holocaust? And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I've been talking to Jenny about the same thing for quite some time. And I was like, how? I don't know. It's like, when you're ready, you're ready. So at that moment I was ready, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to move on. Like, this person's always going to be in my life. I have to get a new perspective here. Right.
Because you can't change them, whatever.
Right.
We can't change history. We can only learn and grow out of it. And in some ways, we do a really bad job of that because we keep finding new ways to do that unhealed thing was horrific.
Because it feels validating.
Yeah. And It's why is that in your energy? That's what I look at. Why are you attracted to that? What's it teaching you? It's not about judging what happened, while we can do that for sure with something like the Holocaust, like that was horrific. And I just visited some medieval towns where torture was a part of life, horrific torture. And they did that probably for centuries. That's the way they barbarically treated each other. I can't fathom how a human being can be able to do that, right? So we learn from that, like, what is my barbaric? What's my version of that? That's my mantra when I get judgy of something, like, oh, those horrible people, how could they do that? I have to go, what's my version of that? Because it's in my energy, it's in my peripheral, it's showing up for me to teach me what is my version of that. And we think we're holier than thou more often than we want to care to admit to, like, oh, I would never treat someone like that. And yet, what's my version of that? Even do I do those things to myself?
It's really loud when you can turn it around and be like, oh,
it's
what's my version?
So, but you have to have, sometimes when you said that hit me hard when I asked you, like, what's your version of 12 years of what? Like, what's your personal Holocaust in the receiving or the being the perpetrator of it? Energy is funny to me. Everything that crosses our mind is for us to glean from and to reflect on. And we've got, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of thoughts go across our brain every day. No wonder we need solitude. No wonder we need to come back to stillness and to calm it, because there's so much stimulation, mental stimulation from ourselves, what we fixate on, what we are preoccupied by, what we are distracted by, not to mention what social media is putting in our head, what the news is putting in our head, what our communities are doing, all the stimulus that brings thought, and thought actually precedes all the feelings that we have. And so when you're thinking about how many thoughts we have that many and more feelings about those thoughts. There's a lot to process in a day. So
I think there's too much to process. I think too much is put onto us that we can't possibly process, but we're trying to.
Yeah. And so that's why, to me, to find the simplification of this as one of those sanctuaries, how do I simplify and process my day? And I love at the end of the day to have a little journal of gratitude, to go, what just happened? What do I want to process out of my day? And I heard Nick Saban just was given some kind of an award. He's a football coach, and I don't even know where I was. I think it was in a restaurant, and he was on the news, and I like him. And so I was listening, and all I heard in whatever was going on is they were interviewing him. And all I heard was, he was like, what would happen in our world if instead of saying, how are you? When we see someone, hello, how are you? Whether we know them or not, if we said, hello, tell me how you've helped someone else today. And I thought, wow, I'm going to take that to heart and ask myself that every night. In what way did I help someone today?
I love that.
Kristen and I were in one of our tangents before we started recording this episode, was that we've been in cocooning stage for quite a while. A lot of us, a lot of my clients have been there. We've been kind of going back in our history. We've been going back and gleaning and healing wounds and dredging the lake and clearing out debris that sunk to the bottom from generations ago. And it's hard work. And how so many of us now feel this need for expansion. And I said, I feel like we've crawled into cocoon, especially during COVID. We kind of isolated from each other. It's sort of naturally built in, this cocooning process. And now it's time to emerge. It's like, let's bring ourselves into this time of awakening and simplification and take our sanctuary with us, and to spread our wings and sun ourselves, let the sunlight in and
to be
slow down and be in service.
Yeah.
And what can we do now to help others? And whether you're going into the cocoon, whether you're in the middle of a transformational process, or you're ready to emerge in a new way, because we're all at different phases of that, it's important that you participate in the journey of that and not just busy your life away. I mean, we busy our lives away and we're not connected to that process of transformation that's always happening within us, because our purpose here is to expand and grow. It isn't to be stagnant or suffer, in silence and die. It's, we really have this freedom to be able to spread our wings and fly. And we're stuck in patterns. We're stuck in generational trauma. We're stuck in all this heavy energy that you do have to do something with it. And if you haven't started doing something with it, start and get that process going, because the sooner you do, the sooner you're coming out the other side, rebirthing yourself into a beautiful phase of life.
Well, and I've realized too, when you can get out of your daily patterns, for example, like after college, I took a road trip across America, or recently my husband and I went to Colorado, and you have none of the daily pressures on you. You get to fully experience, well, I guess, I don't know, maybe you have to be open to it, Jenny, but like the true expansive feeling that really exists within yourself. And I know Jenny experienced that in her recent trip. And it's like, it's such a hit in the face and a reminder of like, oh, this is who I am. I like this, Kristen.
Right. So that's a great way to kind of wrap up this podcast, because the focus of it for me has been to have you, our listeners, think about, who am I? And one of the ways you can do that is to say, when did you most feel true to who you are? When did you come face to face with your own soul and smile and say, this is me? And what is that? It isn't your gender, your hair color. That's not what we're talking about. Who are you as a human? Who are you as a human being? And get into that depth with yourself. Get into the core so that you can align to that person, who you are in your wholeness, in your highest energy, in your highest frequency of your soul. Who are you? And what matters to you in that space? And when you go on a trip, or you can let go of the structure that tells you who you are, that puts you in the work mode of who I am. I go to work on Monday. Who am I when I'm off on Fridays? Who am I on a Saturday morning? Life and structures and calendar and time kind of control some of who you are. There was this story, I'm going to wrap it up with this, but I don't know if I've shared this. I grew up in Southern West Virginia. My best friend, Suzanne, lived across this big field, and they had horses. And I used to sit on the fence and I'd look up at her house, and they had a riding rink. I couldn't even see her house, but I could see when they were riding. And I didn't even know them at the time. I was, I think, 7 years old. And I would just watch them and think, oh, I'd love to go over there and watch them up close, because I loved horses. And anyway, we became best friends, and they became my second family. Her whole family was like my second family. If I wasn't at my house, I was at hers, and vice versa. And they had a horse named Gallant. And Suzanne's mom, who was like a second mom, would just say, anytime you want to just take Gallant out and ride, you're welcome to. And so they'd turn him loose in the field, and Gallant would sometimes come up to our fence line, and I would go out and pet him and hop on his back and just sit bareback. Sometimes I'd lay down and put my head on his rump and stomp his back leg to whip a horsefly off of him, and a whole head would shake. I can just remember the smells. Talk about the senses. I can go in that moment right now and I can smell the horse, the hay. I can feel the sunshine. I can see the color of the sky, the clouds drifting by. I mean, I'd take in those moments, and you never forget them when you do those practices of presence. Well, I was on him, and at one point, sometimes a horsefly would bite, and he would get mad, and he'd start bucking to get me off, because he might thought I was the fly. And off he'd run like the wind. and I would be sitting on him, and get either thrown off. This one time I thought, I'm not going to let him throw me off. And I grabbed the mane and I hugged his neck, and he ran like the wind, and he was going so fast. And at some point I let go. It's sort of taken us back to the steering wheel. I let go and let him run. And I joined him on that run of freedom. And I put my hands out, and he was going so fast, the wind was making my eyes water. And I was a little bit afraid I'd lose my contacts because it was like, oh my gosh, we're going so fast. And it was a glide. It wasn't a bouncy trot. When a horse gallops, it's actually very smooth. He was going so fast, and I was just gliding with him. And I felt myself one with him. It's the weirdest thing because I was probably 13 years old at the time. And I got a sense of what it felt like to just be one with this beautiful animal. And that's that sense of freedom. That's that sense of who am I in that space. We are so connected. I can't even describe. I don't have words to tell you about what that moment meant to me, but it felt like I was who I was meant to be in that moment. I wasn't doing anything for anybody, but I was who I was meant to be in that moment. There was no fear. There was no goal. There was no agenda. There was no judgment. It was all these, refining things that we do. They were all out the window. I was just in the moment, feeling complete surrender and freedom. And my soul loved that. My soul loved that. If I could do a self-portrait of my soul, it would be that moment. And it's how do we connect to that? And when I just took this trip, there was that sense again of just taking it all in and being in the moment and letting my soul breathe. Oh my goodness. It's like life can suffocate us. And so getting to let my soul breathe, I realized I need to do more of that in my life. I've been holding my breath for a long time. And sometimes it means interrupting, to your point, Kristen, interrupting those patterns in order to let your soul breathe.
Yeah, like you don't even realize how tightly you're holding your breath until you get out into an area where you can breathe and you're like, oh, this feels so good.
Yeah. And where does your soul call home? I always ask that question. I call them vision quests, spirit quests. Where does your soul go to feel alive? And everybody can have a different place where they feel that's where I like to be. Some people it's mountains. Some people it's any waterfall is where their soul breathes. Some people will say it's the ocean. Where does your soul breathe? Like to go for breath? Where is it on this whole earth? Where does it like to be? And that's another way of getting to know who you are, right? It's where does my soul like to be, to breathe? And how often do you get there? So a lot of food for thought, a lot of deep conversation in this. To wrap up, we want to challenge you to build into your life the 4 sanctuaries. Build in a time to spend time in stillness. What shows up? What makes you not want to be still? In the silence, whose voice interrupts your silence? What's it saying?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Because it takes courage if sometimes the voice is something that you haven't dealt with.
It does take courage. And if once you sit in that silence and you hear that voice, it gives you, when you said it's like a prescription for life, well, this is a disease in you that's beginning by having an intrusive voice that maybe is judgmental or harsh with you. We need to cure that, right? We need to fix it with this prescription. The silence and the stillness allow this stuff to come up so that you go, it's like an x-ray. Oh, I have a cavity starting. I need to repair that so it doesn't turn into something bigger. So those voices are actually gifts. Taking the time to be in the solitude, the stillness, the silence, and then in what ways can you simplify just one part of your day? What's one part of your life that is chaotic, and how can you simplify it? because chaos precedes creation. First, there's chaos, but if we participate with it and we recognize it, we start to create order from it. And then it's a simplistic, peaceful. For me, simplicity equates to peace. I'm not peaceful when things are chaotic. So when things are simplified and I break it down, first, I'm not overwhelmed, but two, I can enjoy it because I'm more peaceful as I navigate it. So we're going to invite all of you to step into one of those 4 sanctuaries every day over the next 30 days and see what shows up for you. And when you sit in that sanctuary, when you sit in the solitude, when you sit in the silence, the stillness, create the simplicity that you need, make sure that you always go into that sanctuary with love. Take care.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart, and I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself and do so with love.